Namaste. Welcome to this special tutorial on pigeon pose, the alternatives. So for lots of people, pigeon pose is something that when it comes up in class, you're like, oh no, please not pigeon pose again. It just doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit my hips, my knees, or I just don't feel comfortable in it. And for other yogis, it is the one pose that they're like, yes, I love pigeon pose. So if you belong to the former category, then this will hopefully give you some alternatives to that particular posture. And for those of you who love pigeon pose, perhaps you love it a bit too much. And so doing these poses will also help you to stabilize hips, particularly if you have done a little bit too much opening. So most of us have jobs where we sit, or lives where we sit a lot, either in cars or at desks, and do a lot of forward bending, which stretches out the structures at the back of the body, particularly the gluteus muscles, can make them a little bit lazy and laxed. I saw written somewhere, sitting is the new sugar. So apparently sitting is considered as bad for you as sugar. I'm not sure that that's right, but it certainly can lead to having lazy gluteus muscles here in the buttocks, which destabilizes the hips. And sometimes it feels good in the stretch when we do pigeon pose, but it's not very helpful for maintaining our stability and maintaining our hip mobility as well. So let's have a look at some alternatives here. So the first alternative doesn't even involve being in the standard pigeon position. We're going to start with our legs out in front. I can do this slightly sideways on, might be easier to see. And then leaning slightly back, but not too much, crossing the left ankle over the right thigh. And we want the foot itself to be free, not the outside of the foot resting on the thigh, which causes the ankle to turn in a not so useful way. So it doesn't matter here how high up your left knee is. You'll notice that mine is quite high, and that's because my hips don't rotate very well. So to do our pigeon variation, we're going to lengthen the back of the body and lift the chest, trying not to sag into the low back, and simply slide the right foot in towards us to wherever is useful. So to wherever it needs to be to feel like it's doing something for us. At the same time, trying to keep the shoulders rolling towards each other, the shoulder blades rather, to keep the chest open, not gripping, but lifting, particularly just behind the back of the pelvis. So lifting the back of the pelvis forwards. And once you get to a place that feels useful, maybe you're beginning to feel a stretch, but avoiding any position that puts the knee into a pinching or turning, torquing sensation. We're gently going to sway the right leg from side to side. The left leg simply stays where it is and follows the movement. Very good. And once you've swayed a little from side to side, trying to find that place in the sway where you feel the most sensation of openness, of the potential of creating space. So some people would describe that as a stretching sensation, and if it feels stretchy, then that's good, but not too stretchy. So we don't want to go as far as we're able to go before we get stuck, maybe just slightly back from there. Press the left leg into the right leg really firmly. Feel the outside of the left hip really engage, the structures around the supporting structures around the left hip, maybe even the inner thigh engaging as well. And then once you've held for a few breaths, gently releasing, doing a little bit of swaying to release any tension there. And see if you can maybe slide your right foot a bit closer towards you. Then you do the same thing again. So starting with a sway, trying to find the place on your sway that feels like you're, I hate to use the term meeting your edge, but it feels you're approaching the edge of your range of movement. Making sure that your chest is lifted, you're not sagging in the low back. And if you can't feel this as an opening position at all, tip the top of your pelvis slightly forward, and you will. And then pressing the two legs, well, pressing the left leg towards the right leg, holding, breathing, keeping the shoulders relaxed, the face relaxed. And then when you're ready, letting go, doing a little bit of swaying. And you can repeat this as many times as you like, drawing the right foot closer and closer towards you if you create the stability and space to do that. And it's a lovely practice. So why don't we do that the same on the other side as well? So uncrossing the legs, taking a moment here, rolling the thighs or paddling the knees a little bit, or doing a bit of both with some circles. If you need to release your wrists as well too. And then crossing the right foot over the left thigh, leaning back ever so slightly. You're just leaning back enough to create space, but at the same time lengthening and easing the top of the pelvis forwards. I'm going to slide the left foot in towards us to wherever is comfortable and doing our sway. And you can start with the foot further away from you than you can sit with this position of the legs, so that you approach this in a more gentle, nurturing way for the body. So you allow the body to get used to the position, to begin to open the muscular structures. When you're ready, taking your legs to the position where it begins to feel like you're approaching that feeling of stretch, press the right leg into the left leg. Feel the whole of the right side of the pelvis engage. Draw the shoulder blades maybe a little bit towards each other. Make sure you're tipping the top of the pelvis forwards so that you don't sag in the low back. And then gently releasing, doing a little sway, then sliding your left foot a bit closer in if you want to. I've ended up doing this quite close. So going to wherever feels like a really nice stretch, pressing the two legs together, definitely pressing the right leg towards the left, resisting perhaps a little bit with the left, making sure that you haven't sagged in your low back. And when you release, a little sway again. So I've ended up doing it only twice on my right side because I drew my legs closer together. If you want to do it another time, you can. And then when you've done that, you just take a moment to loosen the effort in the legs and release the tension in the legs. And we'll move on to our second variation. I have some blocks here, but they're for a later variation. So for our second variation, we're going to lie down onto the back. And here the upper body can be really passive. And we're going to cross the left leg over the right thigh again. So the same sort of position. We want perhaps a touch of effort in this left foot. So if the foot is floppy, we're more likely to leave the knee in a destabilized position. We don't want to flex the foot as much as we can, but we just want it to be between those two extremes, a little bit active. Again, only doing this position if your left knee and hip feel okay in it. And we're going to begin with the same sort of sway from side to side. And part of the reason why we sway is because the muscles of the buttocks, certainly the gluteus medius and maximus, are fan-shaped. So to access a good feeling of length or a ripple of stretch across them, you need to orientate the muscles in different directions, not just in one direction. So if that feels okay, you can draw your foot closer towards you. You can do the same thing again, or if you're ready to, you can float your right leg off the floor and do the same thing with the right foot off the floor and the right knee back towards your body as much as feels comfortable. And this is a much more dynamic position than the previous one, in that we don't press and hold anywhere. And if you want to, you can make circles with the knee. That's the right knee that's driving this movement. upper body nice and relaxed. And you can go in both directions. That sense of effort in the feet, just a little, not too much. You don't need to really focus on your abdominal muscles working because they will automatically be recruited, but if it helps you, then you can. When you're ready, you can take your right foot to the floor and you can try a slightly twisted variation of this posture, where you bring your right foot a little bit towards your center line and then take your left leg over to the right as the right knee comes to the floor. You don't have to get your left foot down on the floor, but if you do, then it's useful to be able to feel that sense of being able to let go. So if your left foot doesn't touch the floor, if your right knee doesn't come down to the floor in a supportive way, you can place a cushion or a blanket folded or a block or something underneath. And here we've got that sense of space and opening, which can be really useful for runners, anyone who's very strong in the back of the body, as an alternative to pigeon pose. But that sense of lengthening and opening happens in different places depending on where these knees are. So if I take my right knee towards the bottom of my mat where my feet usually point to, then that takes the rotation into a different part in my body. So I get a different kind of sensation, and that I might find more useful. Or I can begin to draw the knees towards my right shoulder, and again, feeling that the sensation moves in the body can be useful because maybe it reaches something that the previous position didn't. And so along this arc of drawing the right knee to the right shoulder or the right knee away from the right shoulder, you'll find the place that works best for you, and you can hold for a couple of deep breaths, not too long, before returning to the center and uncrossing your legs. Now I find it useful to straighten my legs either up towards the ceiling or along the floor in between time, because it helps to release that space at the back of the knee. And it's useful to wave the soles of the feet from side to side to just let the femur bones rock in the hip sockets, but that can also be done with the feet up towards the ceiling, a little bit of a massage on the low back there in between. So doing the same thing to the opposite side, crossing the right leg over the left leg, and just beginning here, making sure that the right foot is completely free of the left leg itself, swaying from side to side, just a little sway. We sometimes are encouraged to keep parts of our body rigid or holding as we work in yoga. So instead of doing that, try to keep a gentle engagement. So a gentle engagement across the abdominal muscles and gently allowing the upper body to really relax down. Doesn't mean it can't move if it wants to go with the movement a little bit, but a gentle surrender downwards. Then when you're ready, you can draw your left knee in towards you, and with your left knee off the floor, or your left foot off the floor, again waving from side to side. So this pose is sometimes called the reclining pigeon or the supine pigeon. We can make circles with the left knee, just allowing the right leg to follow. Again, so we access across the body of the muscular structures in both directions. And at the same time, give a lovely massage to the low back. And then if you want to, you can float your left foot to the floor and allow your left foot to come towards your right side just a touch as you lower the left leg down to the left side, the right foot to follow. If you need a bit of support underneath the leg, by all means, you can do that. Some people don't feel badly hanging in the mid-air. That's okay too. But if you feel like you get more of a release, then you can support underneath. And then here, explore how it feels to have the left knee slightly further away from the left shoulder. Perhaps that is the better position for accessing good sensation in your body, or perhaps it is with the left knee a bit further towards the left shoulder. And for me, this one is by far better in terms of I feel this all across my middle back, down the side of my body, across the buttock, across the outside of the hip, even a little bit on the inner thigh. And I'm not feeling a sensation that feels too loud, or I'm not tense about anything. It's just, I can feel it reaching all those parts. When you're ready, coming back to center, crossing the legs and taking a moment, rolling the ankles, rolling the wrists, rolling the leg bones and the arm bones in their respective joints. And then we're going to bend the knees into the chest and rock backwards and forwards through the length of the spine to come up into sitting. But at the same time, we're trying to do a little bit of a massage, so not being in too much of a hurry to come into sitting. Wonderful stuff. So our next variation is a variation that's seated, and it's based on the deer pose. So if you leave your I'm going to muddle my lefts and rights now, or change them around because I'm sitting facing you. So your right leg is going to be in front of you with your knee directly in front of the hip if you can, and your left leg out to the side with the leg more directly out to the side of the hip there. The feet can fall where they may. If you want to aim for a classic pigeon, or if you want to work towards doing a classic pigeon, you would have your knee bent at almost a right angle. But please, it's not about the shape we make, it's about how it feels. So here we want to, without leaning backwards, we want to keep the fingertips on the floor for support and lift, or attempt to lift, the front leg off the floor. Just hovering it up and down, up and down. Trying not to sag in the back to be able to do it, but feeling that sense of central lift. So let's do one more, lifting up and down. Doesn't matter if you can't lift all the way up. If you engage to find lightness against the floor is fine as well. Then we're going to do an opposing movement where we lean ever so slightly forward and press that right leg down towards the mat. So pressing down, holding down, nice and firm, feeling the engagement through the pelvis, through the outside of the hip as well. This back leg can be quite passive. Coming back to center and then lifting the front leg. And I get even more lift now that I've done the opposing movement. So leaving this leg down, leaning slightly forward, pressing down with the right leg. So we're doing these two actions to stabilize, to create space, to create strength. Coming back to upright, not leaning backwards, and then lifting the front leg. And release. We'll do one more, leaning forwards and pressing down. And releasing. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So I like to swing my back leg in and my front leg out to come to sitting in deer pose on the other side. And here, well, let's just get on with it, shall we? So checking the position is good for you, and then sitting nice and upright, lifting the front leg, hovering the leg off the floor and lower. Try a few, lift and lower. Doesn't matter if you're simply getting a little bit of lightness against the floor, lift and lower. Then leaning slightly forward and pressing down with the left leg now. Really firmly pressing it down, feeling it engage, feeling that stability from your center, releasing out, standing tall or sitting tall, lift and lower, lift and lower. Let's lean slightly forward, press down, holding firm, not forcing, just engaging, coming upright, lifting and holding. See if you can hover a little bit higher this time. or a little bit longer. And one more, pressing down, leaning slightly forward, pressing down, and gently releasing. And in this pose, a little bit of practice pays dividends. So whilst most yoga teachers would encourage you to do a little bit of yoga fairly frequently, maybe even every day between your big yoga classes, if you practice this on a regular basis, even a couple of times in a day, you will find that you get an increased sense of strength, and you'll soon be able to lift your leg from the floor, even if you can't do that right now. Okay, so coming out of this posture, again, taking a moment perhaps to roll the knees, roll the ankles, and feel a little bit of softening through the pelvis. And we're going to come into our next variation. So for this one, I'm going to turn sideways on my mat, but angle a little bit towards you. And we're going to start from hands and knees. So here we're going to draw the right foot forward, or the right knee forward, and then angle the leg. So the knee comes out to the side, so the foot can come through the body to rest towards the right side, the left side of the body. And then we're going to put the knee down. So now the outside, or the top of my knee, the top of my shin, the top of my foot is on the floor. And depending on what angle or available rotation you've got in your hips, your foot might be very much further round, but mine only goes to there under its own steam. So this is a great way to not impose. So I can move my foot to here with my hand, and I can feel it pulling on my hip. But if I was to go into pigeon pose here, I would twist my knee. So by using just the rotation that we've got under our muscular steam, without any levering or helping or manhandling, we get our legs in a very much more healthy position for our knees. And then we're going to stretch the back leg back, but keep the knee off the floor. So this is a much more active variation of pigeon than you're perhaps used to. And at the moment, we've got quite a lot of weight in our upper bodies. And what we're going to do is press down into this right leg underneath the body and come up onto our fingertips. If you want to, you can slide your back leg back a little bit, but there's no need. You can keep your hips higher, no problem at all. If you can, pressing down into that right leg, you can take your left hand to your left buttock and then bring fingertips back to the floor. Same thing on the other side, right hand to right buttock or hip and back to the floor. And if you can, woohoo, a little bit of balance, both hands up, really active pose, and then both hands down. And then bending in the back knee, sliding your right foot back into hands and knees. And I would take a downward facing dog at this point. So gently pressing into the hands and the feet, lifting the hips. If you want to, you can do a little bit of paddling of the knees, or indeed rotating through the shoulders. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So coming back to hands and knees. This time we're going to draw the left knee off the floor and forward, and then turn the foot underneath the body. So the whole of the left leg is off the floor, finding that rotation that comes naturally before putting the knee down and sliding the right leg backwards. The right toes tucked under, the right knee is straight-ish, but it's off the floor. Doesn't need to be absolutely straight. Then from here, we're going to press down into that left leg and walk the fingertips back towards us. So we're up on fingertips rather than on the palms of the hands. From here, still pressing down into that left leg, gently taking the left hand to the left buttock, and then back to the floor, right hand to the right buttock, or hip and back to the floor, and then pressing down, both hands up, holding for a few breaths if you can, and releasing down. Excellent stuff. And then sliding in the back knee, uncrossing the legs, coming into downward facing dog.
for a nice little paddle. And if you've paddled enough and you simply want to hold, lengthening the back of the legs, you can, remembering to lift the tailbone high. I prefer to keep a touch of softness through my elbows and my knees so that it feels like this is dynamic, that I'm engaged in the posture. I'm not just hanging out with no awareness. And then when you're ready, coming back to hands and knees, and we will do another pigeon variation. Oh, your hips are really going to be either loving or hating this. So for this next variation, if you would like to have your blocks to the fore, to the ready, you can use 2 tin cans. It's just to give you some lift away from the floor. So same position to go in from. So from hands and knees, left knee forward, angle across the body, and then prop the left knee down and slide the back leg away, but take the knee to the floor this time. And here we're going to bounce. So we're going to take the hips from side to side a little, checking always to make sure that it feels good in the knee, feels good in the hip. Lovely job. And you can also pulse just up and down. That might feel really nice too. And then using the blocks for a bit of support, because our hips are a little bit closer to the floor in this, we can give our upper body a bit of support so that we're not sagging all of our weight into the hip itself, which won't be useful if you've already got quite stretched buttocks muscles. And if you want to, you can come a little bit lower. You can turn your supports down. You can rest your forearms down here, but checking that it still feels good in your knee. And that's really, really important. There's no point in overstretching your knee. I did it for years and now I regret it. Okay, so if you want to go a little bit deeper, but it twists in your knee, you can drop your left buttock your right buttock to the floor with your left leg long and straight behind you. You can even untuck your toe at this point. And I find that this position, if I want to really fold forward, then this position is much more helpful to me because I've got the support of the floor underneath my hip and I'm not twisting the knee at all anymore. It's good. But if you would prefer to keep the hips more square, you can take one of your blocks and put it underneath your hip and you get the same feeling of you're on something, you're really able to ground, you're able to find support there so that it makes your posture much more comfortable if you then fold forward over the front leg. I'm doing a course with Julie Martin at the moment. She's a lovely yoga teacher and she actually no longer practices the forward folding pigeon at all in her own practice, which is interesting to note. Whichever variation you're in, if you want to do a little something for your quadricep in the back leg, you can fold your back leg towards you. Now, simply holding your foot towards your thigh, towards your heel, towards your buttock might be enough. But if you want to do a little bit more, you can flex your back foot and then sway your foot from side to side as close to the buttock as you like, just to access more than one area of your quadriceps. Excellent stuff. You can even do, without holding the foot, you can even do little circles here in both directions with your heel and release down. And then to come out, I'm just going to remove this block that I've been kneeling on or sitting on, tucking the back toe under, lengthening the back leg up into your three-legged dog. Give it some lift to open up the front of the right side of the pelvis, a few rotations of the heel, ankle in both directions, and then releasing your top leg down, paddle through both feet. And when you're ready, you can come back into hands and knees to do the opposite side. So bringing this time the left knee forward angling the foot across underneath the body, releasing the outside edge of that leg down, and then taking your right knee back, knee is on the floor this time, and using your blocks for support if you'd like to. So this is my side that doesn't like pigeon pose proper, because I broke my knee when I was 20 and it's still causing me a few problems every now and again. But I've overstretched in my years of yoga since then, and now this is no longer a good option for me. So what can you do if that's the case for you? So if we're looking at this front leg, we can angle that foot back underneath the thigh. So instead of being out to the side, it's underneath the thigh. So my heel is underneath the lowest part of my right buttock. It's my right leg, it's your left leg. And that feels more secure. So I've got that lift. So this is an option. And I find the further over to the opposite side my foot goes, the more torsion, the more twist I've got on my knee. So if I want to do this safely for me, I can do it with the foot underneath me, or I can angle as far as my body naturally goes and use some kind of support so that I can relax in this hip and let some of the twist come into the pelvis more than in the knee. Or I can relax that hip all the way down, that buttock all the way down to the floor. And you get very similar benefits. So somebody who doesn't have the rotation in the hips like I don't, to be able to get their foot across comfortably is going to benefit from this variation, because it will stretch or lengthen or create space in the areas that need it without impacting or having a detrimental impact on the areas that don't need that length or don't have the stability. Or in my case, I've got bony structures that prevent the rotation. So you can still do your quadriceps stretch here. You might want to position yourself just slightly off the buttock to get into that, but you can use a block to do that. And you can wave your tail from side to side, or you can make circles, and you can do that with or without holding the ankle. When you're ready, you can come back into your downward facing dog, or a three-legged dog, to lift that leg long and straight, open up the front of the pelvis, rotating the foot at the ankle a few times in each direction, before releasing the feet down rather, and paddling through the heels. And remembering that you can always fold forward over your pigeon if you want to. The further away from you your hands go in your forward fold, the more intense the lengthened position is. So do take care to work in a position that feels comfortable for you. And the final pose in our pigeon series is the double pigeon. So it's actually called Agni Stamasana, the fire log pose. And I'm going to sit up on a block to do this one because, as we've established, my hip rotation is not up to much. So for Agni Stamasana, normally when we sit cross-legged, if you think about the cross-legged position, the knees move away from the center of the body. So the effect is like having sitting on the base of a triangle or a triangular base. And in Agni Stamasana, this block's a little bit high actually. I'm going to swap it for that one. In Agni Stamasana, we want to create a square base. And we do that by allowing the legs to come out in front of the hips and crossing the shins over each other far away from the body. So I'm not sure if you can get the effect from this angle. Let me change. So instead of bringing the feet back towards the body as we do in a cross-legged position, we have the feet further away from the body. Now, if you are lucky enough to have great rotation in your hips, then you may be able to stack your shins one on top of the other. So that one foot is on top of the opposite knee and one foot is underneath. And if you're able to do things like Padmasana, the lotus or the half lotus, you will almost certainly be able to do that as well. So Agni Stamasana, fire log pose. This is my variation, and it might be yours too. So a little lift of the hips for me. My knees are coming straight out in front of my pelvis, pretty much. They're ever so slightly wider, but only just a bit. And my shins are across to make the final side of the square of my base. And then in this position, I can do a variety of things with my upper body. So I can simply sit, and I actually find this really comfortable for sitting for meditation. So that's quite nice. It's just a little bit different. And you can try other poses for meditation. It doesn't have to be cross-legged. It could be this, it could be cow's face pose, legs. That's quite nice. Kneeling's quite nice. And then I can also do a little forward bend. So here I'm going to engage the belly and fold slightly forward to the point that feels comfortable. And I don't want to put a lot of pressure into the legs here. I want my weight to be down through my sitting bones and to resist the forward fold by pressing the legs down into the floor. So I bring my body forward, and I can sway a little from side to side to negotiate for a bit more space or a bit more length. And I might eventually come a little bit further down. Doing a couple of deep breaths. And then to alternate this forward folding position, I'm going to bring my hands a little bit further back towards me, press into the fingertips, roll the shoulder blades together and open my chest and look forward. So I'm doing more of a cobra position with my upper body. And you will find that that gets to places you don't go if you fold forward with a curved back. So holding each position for a couple of breaths before coming out. I can relax my legs. Take a few moments to notice the difference between the two sides of the body, and then adopt the opposite position of the legs. So the other one crossed first, or crossed in front, crossed over. And on this side, if I have the right supports in place, I can actually sit with my shins one on top of the other with a little bit of support between them. But for the purposes of this video, I should just do this variation, which is also good. So sitting in your Agni Stamasana, your fire log pose, and then finding a gentle lean forward, pressing the legs down at the same time a little bit, and a sway from side to side. We do that negotiating for space, that discovery act on both sides, because the body behaves differently with the different orientation of the legs. And then when you're ready, you can fold as deep as feels comfortable for you. This is very much more comfortable for me on this side. And having a couple of breaths, soft in the shoulders, lengthened in the back of the neck as well. When you're ready, you can press into the fingertips, roll the shoulder blades together and open the chest, and experience just that movement of the length. This gets the piriformis muscles, which are underneath all the gluteus muscles in your buttocks. And if you suffer from sciatica that's caused by a tight piriformis, this is a really nice one to do. And then coming up to the center, stretching the legs, giving them a little bit of a wiggle and a waggle. And that is the end of our pigeon investigation. So we've done all of the ones that I could think of off the top of my head. If you have any other pigeon variations you'd like to share, please by all means do share them here, and let me know. I'd love to know other ones to do. And there are standing poses, of course, that are similar to pigeon, but we will maybe look at those a different day. Okay, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, let me know. Namaste, guys.